Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When ex-military Grayson Lockwood bought his quiet 2-acre lot, he thought the war was behind him. But when the ruthless HOA president came knocking with fake rules and real threats, she had no idea. She just picked a fight with the wrong porch. And this time, Grayson was under no one's command. The first thing I learned in the military was to never ignore the perimeter. Doesn't matter if it's a war zone or your own front porch, control your ground. So when I bought my 2-acre plot in Virginia, with the ink barely dry on the notarized exemption from the Misty Creek Trails HOA, I figured my battles with bureaucracy were over. It was a warm Thursday morning. I'd taken the day off from installations to fix the handrail on my porch. Nothing fancy, just some good old treated pine and a cordless drill. My German Shepherd Roscoe lay nearby, sunbathing with the oblivious freedom only a dog can manage. That's when I heard it, the slow crunch of tires over gravel that didn't belong to anyone I knew. A white Lexus SUV, polished to an unnatural gleam, rolled up my driveway like it had a right to be there. The driver's window lowered with a mechanical whir, and out popped the head of a woman I recognized from whispers at the feed store and the Facebook group I regretted joining, Karen DuBois. 59, HOA president, and local dictator in a cardigan. She didn't ask for permission, didn't wave, just stepped out like a surveyor in stilettos. I stayed put, holding my drill, watching as she clicked up the steps of my porch uninvited, holding a stack of printer paper like it was holy scripture. "Mr. Lockwood," she said, her lips barely moving under layers of lip gloss. "I'm here to deliver a formal notice regarding your structure." I raised an eyebrow. "Structure?" She held out the papers like she was offering communion. "This canopy you've erected. It violates the aesthetic harmony code of Misty Creek Trails." I took the papers without flinching. "Ma'am, this property isn't part of Misty Creek Trails. It was excluded from HOA jurisdiction at sale, recorded, notarized, and on file with the county." Her smile turned thin. "Yes, well, the HOA recently passed a resolution to reintegrate adjacent properties. It's only a matter of time. I'm simply giving you the courtesy of verbal notice." "And I'm giving you the courtesy of a reality check," I replied. "This land isn't yours to manage. I didn't vote, I don't pay dues, and your resolution has zero bearing here." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You're visible from the road, Mr. Lockwood. That makes you part of the visual environment of Misty Creek, which means compliance is a matter of community interest." I laughed, not out of amusement, more the kind of laugh you give a coyote before chambering a round. "Lady, the only thing you're managing right now is your own delusion." She stepped closer. Roscoe sat up, ears perked. "This isn't over," she said, her tone sharpening like a garden shear. "HOA governance extends beyond ink on paper. You'll see that soon enough." And with that, she turned on her heel and strutted back to her car. She didn't look back, but I stood there watching, waiting until the Lexus disappeared down the road, the dust trail curling like smoke behind it. I glanced down at the violation notice in my hand. Bold Arial font, amateur graphic of a tree, and half a dozen misspelled bylaws. The whole thing stank of overreach and arrogance. But this wasn't about paper. This was about power. And I've seen people like Karen before. Different uniforms, same hunger to dominate. Only difference now, I'm not under orders. I'm home. And she just stepped onto the wrong porch. The next morning, my inbox had 3 spam emails and one from a name I didn't recognize. No signature, no phone number. Just a PDF attachment titled Community Observation Report, lot adjacent to MCT. The document was filled with grainy, zoomed-in photos of my house taken from different angles. One from the east fence line, one from behind the shrubs near the mailbox, one even from across the creek. I zoomed in. There was Karen, half visible in the reflection of her Lexus window, holding a smartphone like a sniper rifle. I closed the laptop, shook my head, and grabbed the screw gun. Enough subtlety. By noon, I'd installed 3 motion-detecting cameras along the property line and posted new signs. Private property, no trespassing, no HOA access. Roscoe supervised from the porch, tail thumping every time a screw hit wood. The wind shifted, and so did the energy. I caught it before I saw them. That silence that means someone's watching. 2 people in matching blue polo shirts, clipboard equipped, came marching up my gravel path like they owned it. HOA enforcers, one man, one woman, mid-30s, plastic smiles. Karen trailed behind them, arms crossed like a prison warden inspecting the yard. "Mr. Lockwood," the clipboard woman started, "we're conducting a visual survey for compliance enforcement." I didn't move from the steps. "You're standing on private land. That's trespassing. You've got 30 seconds to step off before I file a report with the county sheriff." Karen spoke before they could. "The visual perimeter review was authorized by our executive board. We are entitled to document visual disruptions to the community. And I'm entitled to not have strangers photographing my living room window," I said, stepping down one stair. "Read the signs. You're not welcome here." The man raised his hands in mock surrender. "We're just documenting structures visible from the road." "You're 70 feet from the road," he faltered. I pointed to the nearest oak tree. "That's the property line. You crossed it. Now go." Karen refused to budge. "This won't stop me, you know. You may have ink and stamps, but I have votes. People trust me." I gave a dry chuckle. "If people trusted you, you wouldn't be out here with your goons and an off-brand Gmail." She flushed, but didn't respond. Instead, she turned to leave, pulling out her phone and muttering something about escalation protocols. I watched them go, not out of paranoia, but principle. These weren't harmless nuisances anymore. They were building a paper trail, stacking provocations like dry kindling. I'd seen it in war zones, in bureaucratic turf wars, in military tribunals. When power doesn't work legally, it turns psychological. That night, Roscoe started barking at 2 a.m. I got up, barefoot and irritated, and checked the cameras. Sure enough, headlights swept across my lower field. A car had parked just beyond my fence line, off property, but close enough to feel like breath on my neck. No movement, just watching. The camera timestamp ticked by, and then the car backed away, headlights off. By morning, I had the footage saved, labeled, and 2 more cameras ordered. The porch, once a symbol of peace, was now a line in the sand. Karen hadn't declared war with weapons. She'd declared it with clipboards and entitled whispers, so I responded with lenses and law. 2 days later, I was on the porch again, this time with a mug of black coffee and the Sunday quiet humming around me. Roscoe lay at my feet, tail twitching in half-sleep. The early light was golden, peaceful, a rare pocket of silence. That's when I heard the tires again. Same Lexus, slower this time, creeping up the driveway like it knew it was trespassing but didn't care. Karen parked, stepped out, and started up the walkway without hesitation. She was wearing her HOA branded windbreaker like it was body armor, and a rolled-up piece of paper clutched like a sword. "No cameras today?" she asked, all ice and mockery. I held up my phone. "Always recording." She scoffed and handed me the rolled-up document. I didn't take it. "You're not welcome here." She waved the paper like a preacher holding a scroll. "This is your last chance to comply voluntarily. The board is prepared to pursue legal pathways to assert community governance. You may not be in the system now, but your property is visually and socially integrated." "Your board has no authority here," I said, taking a deliberate step backward. "Now leave." Her face twisted. "Don't play dumb, Grayson. You think some piece of paper keeps you outside the rules." HOA jurisdiction is a living system, fluid, evolving. You don't get to opt out just because you stomped your feet and filed a deed exclusion 10 years ago. "That exclusion's 7 years old," I corrected. "Notarized, verified, and reaffirmed during last year's zoning renewal. I'm not under your thumb. Period." "You're living among us," she snapped. "Which means you affect our standards. The HOA voted—" "I didn't vote," I interrupted. "I didn't ask. I didn't join. This is private land. You're trespassing. Again." Karen's voice raised a notch. "We'll see what the sheriff says. Let's ask him together." I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed 911. That stopped her cold. "You're seriously calling the police?" she asked, incredulous. "You're on my porch. You've been warned multiple times. I've got video, audio, and documented prior entries. This isn't your 5th grade book club anymore." She sneered. "You're playing with fire." "No," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "You are." I gave the dispatcher a clear, calm report. Unauthorized entry, repeat trespasser, potential escalation. As I spoke, Karen paced like a caged animal, muttering to herself, occasionally snapping glances at my phone like it might explode. Roscoe stood up now, tail still but alert. By the time the patrol car rolled up, she had moved a few feet back from the porch but hadn't left the property. Two officers stepped out. Officer Sarah Henderson, maybe late 30s, calm eyes, and Officer John Moore, a taller man with a clipboard and no patience for HOA nonsense. They approached us slowly, professionally. "Good morning," Sarah said. "We got a report about a trespasser. Can someone tell me what's going on?" I spoke first, concise and steady. "This woman entered my property without permission. I've got video from today and from 2 previous incidents. She's not welcome, she's been informed multiple times, and I'd like her removed." Karen jumped in like a wound spring. "He's distorting everything. I'm here under the authority of the HOA. This is an informal enforcement visit. He's a danger to the visual integrity of Misty Creek." Sarah blinked. "Ma'am, what does that mean?" "He refuses to acknowledge our jurisdiction," Karen snapped. "The HOA has a right to monitor and address property violations. He's mocking the system." John sighed. "Ma'am, this man's property is not within your HOA jurisdiction, correct?" She hesitated. "That's under reconsideration." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You're aware that the property title has him explicitly excluded?" Karen crossed her arms. "He's hiding behind paperwork." "I prefer to call it the law," I said. "Okay," Sarah said, shifting her stance. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the property now." "He was threatening me with his eyes," Karen barked. "That dog looks dangerous. He's provoking me emotionally." John glanced at Roscoe. "The dog hasn't moved in 10 minutes. Karen's voice cracked into hysteria. "You don't understand. This man's aggression is nonverbal. He's psychologically hostile. He stepped back like he was about to lunge." I took a small step back again, just to make the point. And then, like someone pulled a wire, she snapped. She lunged forward and slammed her fist into my chest. Not enough to knock the wind out of me, but enough to feel the hit echo through my ribs. Roscoe barked once. Both officers moved like lightning. Sarah grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. John moved in and helped force her down, gently but firmly. As Karen shrieked, "You can't arrest me! I'm the HOA president! I'm defending community standards!" They got her cuffed, reading her rights as she writhed on the ground, shrieking about bylaws and threats and emotional disruption. I stood quietly on the porch, arms crossed, still recording. Sarah looked up at me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Been hit harder by office chairs. But thanks." Karen's voice faded into the background as they guided her to the cruiser. She thrashed once more before finally settling, her voice cracking on the phrase, "You're all gonna regret this." I watched the patrol car roll out of the driveway. Then I turned, went back inside, and labeled the recording on my phone. Karen, chest punch final. I thought she might finally get the message when they slammed the cruiser door shut. But Karen wasn't built like that. By Monday morning, the HOA sent out a mass email to Misty Creek residents titled "Unprovoked Assault on Community Integrity, Statement from the Board." I wasn't copied on it directly, being, not a member, but someone forwarded it to me anyway. The subject line alone made me want to eat drywall. Inside, they painted Karen as a concerned leader unjustly detained and called the incident an unfortunate misunderstanding provoked by a volatile individual operating outside community norms. Volatile? I record everything I do, down to my grocery receipts. I sort screws by length. That same day, a neighbor down the road, Glenn, decent guy with more lawn ornaments than sense, knocked on my door, visibly uncomfortable. "Hey Grayson," he said, holding out a letter. "Karen asked me to hand this off. Said it's a formal HOA position statement." I took the envelope and looked at him. "And you agreed to be her messenger?" He shrugged helplessly. "She's still got a lot of sway. And people are scared, man. You punched the president." I blinked. "I got punched. On camera. Twice." He scratched his head. "Yeah, but the HOA email didn't show the video. Just said there was a conflict." I smiled. "Funny. I've got the full video. In 4K. Want to see?" He declined. I opened the envelope after he left. It was a one-page screed full of legalese vomit, claiming the HOA was launching a procedural review of jurisdictional boundaries and re-examining community integration parameters. Translation: they were trying to pull my land back into their spiderweb through paperwork. They weren't even subtle about it. One paragraph actually said, "In the interest of cohesion and visual alignment, non-member lots may be subject to reabsorptive governance if the community deems it necessary." Reabsorptive governance. These people were writing HOA fan fiction. I scanned it, snorted, and threw it in the growing pile of garbage I was calling Exhibit Karen. Then came the news from my lawyer, Molly Chastain. She's being charged on 4 counts, Molly told me over Zoom, sipping from a mug that said lawyered in bright red. Battery, criminal trespass, obstruction of police, and misrepresentation of jurisdiction. Sounds accurate, I said, clicking through the footage files I'd organized the night before. You ready to go scorched earth? Oh, we're past that, she said. I've already drafted the civil complaint. It includes physical and emotional distress, reputational harm, and interference with business. Turns out she's been sending letters to several of your clients, anonymously, warning them about your unsafe installations. One of them forwarded me the envelope. It's postmarked from her HOA office. I froze. That was the line. Karen hadn't just stepped onto my porch and into my chest. She'd stepped into my livelihood. Let's file it, I said. Civil, criminal, every angle. Let's bring the damn roof down. Molly grinned. Already filed this morning. I opened the shared drive where we stored the case material. It was a beautifully curated gallery of Karen's worst hits. Video clips, documents, timestamps, digital footprints. The folder labeled Client Interference now had 7 entries. My business partner Jeff had already agreed to testify. He called it the HOA equivalent of corporate sabotage. That evening, I took Roscoe for a walk along the outer fence line. He was sniffing with interest. Some deer had passed through recently. Me, I was thinking about leverage, about momentum, about what happened when someone like Karen got too comfortable in her little fiefdom and thought the law was just a mood. The sky was darkening, a storm rolling in over the treetops. I didn't mind. I liked the rumble. Reminded me that thunder doesn't ask for permission, and neither do I. Back at the house, I triple-checked the motion sensors and camera syncs just in case. War doesn't end with the first strike. Sometimes it's the courtroom where the real shelling begins. By Friday morning, my property had become a crime scene, a courtroom, and a conspiracy all at once. And not necessarily in that order. It started with a knock. I opened the door expecting a process server or maybe a confused Amazon guy. Instead, I got a woman in business casual with a badge clipped to her blouse that read, Emily Vargas, Office of the County Auditor. Mr. Lockwood? She asked. Yep. I'm here to conduct a preliminary audit of HOA expenditures, specifically Misty Creek trails. We've received multiple allegations of misuse of community funds. Would you be willing to answer a few questions? Would I? I stepped aside and offered her coffee. She didn't take the coffee, but she did sit down at my kitchen table and open a binder labeled Operational Discrepancies. It was glorious. Turns out Karen's arrest triggered something deeper. One of the board members had anonymously submitted a complaint to the county, alleging habitual abuse of fiduciary duty and unauthorized legal expenditure without community vote. Translation, Karen had been using HOA funds to pay her own lawyers, and not just for her criminal defense. She'd been funneling money into private consultations for years, hiring compliance consultants, making research donations, and sending certified letters to people like me, all paid from HOA dues. Vargas asked me for a statement. I gave her a folder labeled Exhibits, Misty Creek Madness, which included Karen's forged violation notices, footage of her entering my property without permission, and screenshots from her anonymous client bashing campaign. Oh, she said, flipping through it. This is comprehensive. I used to investigate war crimes, I said. HOA tyranny's just a slower tempo. 2 days later, I got a call from Glenn, same guy who brought me the Karen-signed hate mail last week. He sounded rattled. Grayson, you might want to come down to the community center. There's a meeting. Stuff's going sideways. Now, I don't usually walk into enemy territory without backup, but curiosity, and maybe a little bloodlust, got the better of me. I put on a clean shirt, grabbed my tablet, and headed out. The community center was packed, maybe 40 people, all crowded into a fluorescent-lit room that smelled faintly of coffee and rage. At the front table sat 3 current HOA board members. Karen's seat was conspicuously empty, replaced with a folded paper sign that read, Temporarily Suspended. The room buzzed until one of the board members, Ted Carmichael, HOA treasurer, banged a gavel like he thought it gave him purpose. We've received notice of a pending audit and a civil suit involving President Dubois, he said, voice cracking slightly. Effective immediately, the board is cooperating with investigators. A woman stood up in the back. Is it true Karen used HOA funds for her personal lawyers? Ted didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. Someone else shouted, "What about the fake votes? She added names to the minutes from the meeting last April. I never even got an email." More voices followed. "She threatened to fine me for planting sunflowers. She forged a signature on my exterior permit denial. She said my teenager's hoodie violated community mood regulations." I stood there quietly, absorbing the unraveling of her empire. It was beautiful, not theatrical, just ugly truth collapsing under its own weight. Ted tried to keep order, but it was hopeless. People had stories. People had receipts. And they were tired of living under HOA law, where Karen had rewritten the rules in crayon and called it binding precedent. After about 15 minutes of chaos, someone spotted me. "Hey," an older guy said, pointing. "Isn't that the guy she punched?" 40 heads turned. I gave a little wave. "Hi." Someone in the crowd said, "You should sue the whole board." "I'm already working on it," I said. A round of half laughs, half applause followed. Even Ted didn't argue. As I walked out, Glenn caught up with me in the parking lot. He looked embarrassed, but also relieved. "Hey man," he said. "I just wanted to say, you were right. We were scared. Karen had us all convinced she could make or break our mortgages. We didn't see it until she went too far." "She's still going," I said. "But at least now she's doing it from behind a holding cell and a county file number." He offered a handshake. I took it. Back home, I updated Molly. "It's not just us now," I told her. "The board's imploding. People are flipping. There's blood in the water." "Good," she replied, "because the next filing's gonna be big, and we're naming the HOA itself." "Full nuclear." "Full nuclear," she confirmed. So I poured a drink, leaned back, and watched the security feeds one more time. Karen always wanted control. Now the only thing she could control was which wall she stared at in booking. I didn't expect a call from the county prosecutor, not that early anyway. "Mr. Lockwood," the voice on the line said, "this is Assistant District Attorney Kyle Ferguson. We're formally opening a criminal investigation into Misty Creek Trails HOA. I'd like to request your full cooperation." "Good timing," I said. "My lawyer's already ahead of you." Within 48 hours, Molly and I were sitting across from Ferguson in a windowless conference room inside the county courthouse. The walls were pale gray, the tables scratched, and the coffee tasted like wet regret. But the man was sharp, direct, and more than a little pissed off. "Karen Dubois used HOA funds to cover her criminal defense," he said, tapping a document with a bright yellow highlighter. "She had zero authorization from the board. She also maintained an unregistered neighborhood security file, basically a black book of residents she considered disruptive." I raised an eyebrow. "Like a hit list." "Pretty much," he said. "Photos, social media accounts, job info, even vehicle plates. She called it the Compliance Readiness Index. We found it on a flash drive hidden inside a fake plant in her office." Molly let out a low whistle. "That's not just unethical, that's criminal data harvesting." "Exactly," Ferguson said. "And it gets worse. We found falsified ballots in the HOA meeting archives, multiple votes on community resolutions with forged signatures. One vote, last year's budget reallocation, included the names of 3 homeowners who were dead. One of them died in 2018. The other 2 hadn't lived in the neighborhood since Obama's first term." I leaned back. "You ever see a board meeting hosted by a Ouija board?" Ferguson didn't laugh. "We're preparing charges: fraud, forgery, conspiracy to misappropriate community funds, and abuse of a public trust. We'll indict her and, possibly, 2 board members. Maybe more." "Will they roll on her?" Molly asked. "Already started," Ferguson said. "Your case cracked it open, but this goes deep." After the meeting, we walked out into the humid Virginia sun, blinking like we'd just returned from another planet. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Glenn. "You're gonna want to see this. Channel 7. Now." I pulled up the local news live stream. "Misty Creek HOA under criminal investigation," the anchorwoman said. "At the center is Karen Dubois, recently arrested for assaulting a neighbor during a dispute caught on police body cam. Sources say Dubois also maintained a secret resident surveillance file and diverted HOA dues to fund her legal defense." The footage cut to a clip from my porch camera, Karen screaming, being handcuffed, shouting something about bylaws. Then it cut again, this time to interviews. One of the residents, Mrs. Palmer, a quiet woman who always wore gardening gloves, was crying. "She threatened me," she said, voice shaking. "Said she'd fine me every week until I removed the visual clutter from my front lawn. She meant my husband's wheelchair ramp." Molly watched over my shoulder. They're not going to recover from this. Later that day, a dozen HOA members filed suit alongside mine. Molly amended our claim into a group action. That gave it teeth. Real ones. We got access to the internal logs, and that's when the last domino fell. Inside the HOA's own system was a PDF titled Visual Disorder Inventory, Q3, listing properties that diminished community cohesion. My name was in red. Next to it, non-compliant veteran, potential instigator, requires pressure campaign. Pressure campaign. That's what Karen called weaponized neighborhood gossip, anonymous mailers, and false reports to zoning. A campaign. I printed that file, slipped it into a plastic sheet, and labeled it in big black Sharpie, Exhibit, Fascism Leaked. By week's end, a full forensic audit was underway. Investigators found undisclosed bank accounts tied to Karen and board treasurer Ted Carmichael. One HOA member reported being paid to attend meetings and vote in Karen's favor, in cash, slid in an envelope with a handwritten note that said, "For community support." The county froze the HOA's assets pending outcome. A reporter reached out for an interview. I declined. I didn't want to be the guy who went viral for getting punched on his porch. I wanted to be the guy who helped break a tyrant's grip on a community. That would be enough. By the time the second week of hearings rolled around, Misty Creek Trails wasn't a community anymore. It was a crime scene with hydrangeas. Local media had set up semi-permanent camera rigs near the entrance sign, which now bore the word liars spray-painted in blood-red paint across the limestone. Somebody had tried to scrub it off, but only managed to make it look angrier. Karen, out on bail but under a strict no-contact order, had become a walking scandal. Footage of her mid-scream porch arrest had been reposted across every social media platform imaginable, dubbed over with everything from opera to air horn remixes. One YouTuber called her Suburban Mussolini. Even my 15-year-old niece sent me a TikTok where Karen's mugshot morphed into the Grinch. The HOA was unraveling in real time, and then came the public hearing. It was held in the county's community dispute chamber, usually reserved for zoning conflicts and barking dog complaints, but this time it was standing room only. Reporters, residents, former board members who looked like they'd aged 10 years in the past 2 weeks. Karen wasn't there. Her lawyers advised her not to appear, probably because the last time she spoke in public, she'd called the judge a civilian obstacle. I sat in the second row beside Molly, who wore a sharp navy suit and a shark smile. In front of us were 3 panelists, representatives from the State Homeowners Association Oversight Committee, the kind of people who usually rubber stamp bylaws and roll their eyes at pet complaints. Not this time. First witness, HOA board member Dana Wolf, who looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. "I joined the board because I wanted to help plant trees," she said, voice shaking. But Karen made it clear from the beginning that she ran everything. She said her word was final, that the bylaws were guidelines and she could override them if the community's values were at stake. Molly leaned toward me. Boom. Second witness, Mr. Whitaker, a retired Marine who'd lived at Misty Creek since it was just dirt lots and dreams. She told me my flagpole violated visual standards and threatened to fine me $100 a day, he said. "I lost 2 buddies in Kandahar. That flag's not coming down." Applause broke out. The panelists didn't stop it. Then came Glenn. He looked nervous, hands twitching, voice cracking. But when he read from Karen's email, the room went dead silent. 2 board members, he read. Subject Lockwood. He's an infection. If he refuses HOA compliance, we will create pressure until his business reputation suffers, target his clients, leak concerns anonymously, make him bend, or make him leave. Molly showed the panel a printed copy with metadata. Time-stamped. From Karen's HOA email. The panelist in the middle, a stern woman named Agnes Trujillo, tapped her pen on the disc. "Is it your testimony," she asked, "that the president of Misty Creek HOA actively used her office to coordinate reputational attacks on a non-member resident?" "Yes, ma'am," Glenn said. And she bragged about it. I watched one of the reporters scribble HOA hit list in all caps. We presented our final exhibits, the surveillance footage, audio logs, the anonymous letters sent to clients, the HOA's secret expense ledgers. Molly explained how this went far beyond rogue leadership. It was a structural failure weaponized by one woman's thirst for power. When the panel recessed for deliberation, the room buzzed like a hive on fire. 30 minutes later, they returned. Agnes Trujillo cleared her throat. The panel finds Misty Creek Trails HOA in violation of State Statute 103.125, she said, regarding abuse of community governance, fraudulent financial behavior, and systemic harassment of non-member individuals. Effective immediately, Misty Creek Trails HOA is to be placed under administrative suspension pending full dissolution. All assets are to be frozen. All board activity is hereby terminated. Silence. And then, cheering. People clapped like they'd just seen a dictator fall on live TV. Molly turned to me. "Well," she said, "you just became the guy who killed an HOA." I didn't smile. I just stood, buttoned my coat, and walked out with Roscoe at my heels. One man, one porch. That's all it took to make a neighborhood remember what freedom looked like. It didn't end with sirens or press conferences. Not really. The fall of Karen Dubois was quieter than expected. More like a balloon slowly leaking power than an explosion. A month after the hearing, the official dissolution paperwork for Misty Creek Trails HOA came through. Residents were free. No more architectural review panels. No more lawn inspections. No more violations for having a blue door or planting the wrong kind of roses. Karen was sentenced to 2 years in state custody. Time served would count toward half. But the judge made it clear that her ban from holding any position of organizational leadership was for life. Her assets were audited. Her legal defense fund, which, as it turned out, was partially funded by HOA dues funneled through 2 dummy invoices, was seized and redistributed. I got my settlement, $85,000 plus legal fees. It wasn't about the money. It never was. But it helped me launch something better. I started an online platform, knowyourlines.org, a small but growing community for property owners who've been bullied by overreaching associations, free legal templates, video guides, a hotline for pro bono consultations. The tagline read, "Where the HOA ends, your rights begin." The first time someone sent me a thank you letter, it hit harder than Karen's fist ever could. A woman from Arizona. Her HOA tried to evict her service dog. I sent her the code references, the appeals process, and 2 template letters. She won. Her message ended with, "You gave me my home back." The porch is quiet now. Roscoe still guards it, his ears twitching every time a squirrel miscalculates its path. The new railings I installed last spring, the same ones Karen called a violation, still stand. They're weathered a bit, but strong, just like I like it. There's a sign on them now, a brushed steel plaque, bolted right into the wood. Here ends the authority of the HOA. Here begins reality. Sometimes neighbors still stop by, not with complaints, just to talk. They bring cookies or beer, and we sit on the steps and swap stories about that one time the neighborhood almost turned into a suburban dictatorship. There's laughter now where there used to be tension. And every once in a while, I get recognized, not by face, but by phrase. A guy at the gas station pumping diesel looked at me and said, "Hey, are you the guy from the video? The one who—" I nodded. He grinned. "Don't swing at the man holding the law," I smiled. "Damn right."